Welcome to the Inspire to Invest podcast, where we're sharing stories from real estate investors and how investing has changed their lives. This episode of Inspire to Invest has been brought to you by Honeybee Development Group and Synergy Mastermind. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inspire to Invest. I want to introduce you to an amazing guest, Rosanne Selci of Selci Properties. She's been investing in real estate for the past 2.5 years, and she's grown her portfolio from 4 doors to over 100. She's currently focusing on commercial, multi-residential buildings, existing and in land development. And her goal is to provide great investment opportunities to inspire others to invest in real estate, whether that means they should be active, passive, or starting small or thinking really big. So welcome, Rosanne. Thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is so exciting.
So you've obviously done some very, very big things in kind of a short period of time. So I guess my question for you is, what were you doing before real estate?
I had just a regular job. I've had a few investment condos for years, like for over 10 years. So I kind of dabbled on the side. But yeah, I was working full time at Nike in downtown Toronto at the head office doing analysis and forecasting and like all the behind the scenes, non-glamorous type of stuff. But yeah, so I did that for years. Like I worked there for over 15 years.
Wow.
And then just started to, I was part of Keyspire. So I started to get more involved with Keyspire and reaching out to more people. And that's when I realized that you can actually do this full time.
Now, for anyone that's watching that doesn't know what Keyspire is, like I've been a member for 5 years, but I'm sure there's plenty of people who don't know. What is Keyspire?
Yeah, it's a membership or a community of investors that join Keyspire, and then you're in this community and you can reach out. There's events, there's learning teachings, like all sorts of like real estate investing focused information. So and a great network of like individuals doing all sorts of different investing, which is great. So like whatever you're interested in, there's somebody you can reach out to who's doing it. And that's how I got interested or learned more about multifamily, just economies of scale and why it makes so much sense for me. Just I wanted to scale. I wanted to become a full-time investor. And for me, that's the quickest way. Just just big, go big.
Yeah, you definitely did that. I saw the award that you transacted on over 8 figures for last year. So I'd say that was a pretty amazing milestone. But thinking back to when you found Keyspire, like what was really kind of the kick in the pants or the catalyst to be like, I got to do this? Obviously you said you've got your first couple of properties and you're starting lightly, but what was really that moment where you're like, I got to jump in head first?
I think it was, that's a really good question. I think it was just realizing that my full-time job was never going to get me, like retirement would be difficult. Like it was never going to get me to that, like create that wealth that I don't know, I want. I know it's not something everybody's striving for, but like I wanted to have the stability like for retirement for my daughter, like not like money and financial, like not having that as an issue or holding me back or preventing me from going on trips. You know what I mean? Just living my life. And so that's where I really saw, and just even from the few condos that I had, the pre-construction condos, and just, you're not really doing much. Like you invest, and then, after a few years being able to refinance and purchasing another one. And then I did that again and again. And so like I had this net worth with like very little time and effort spent. And recycling.
What if I actually dedicate more time towards this? What would be possible, right?
Yeah, exactly. It just made so much sense. I'm like, why isn't everybody doing this? Like even on a small scale, like it doesn't, you don't have to be a full-time investor. Like I just love working on the actual projects. Like owning those condos was very easy. It didn't involve much time. Now the projects I'm working on involve a lot of time, and effort.
So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. So obviously you had the job at Nike. How long did it take for you to make that transition full time? Like, were you trying to straddle kind of both sides of the fence for a while and then you broke free, or did you just kind of make a clean break for it?
No, I definitely was straddling both sides, and it was a lot. It was a lot working full time. And I have a daughter, and like, so evenings, weekends, but
Yeah.
it was definitely like, it's what I wanted. I knew I wanted it. So I just did it. But yeah, it was about 1.5, 2 years
Yeah.
where I was ramping up while I was still working full time. So I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I was going to be able to replace most of my income. Like
Yeah.
by the time I quit, I hadn't replaced all of it, but I didn't want to just quit and have, I wanted to ramp it up, make sure it was
Yeah.
actually something I enjoyed,
Yeah.
and get to a point where it made sense.
Yeah, I mean, you had obviously a family to take care of. So I guess when you obviously started with the condo, so what would have been your next big project that you took on when you decided that you wanted to move forward in this direction?
Well, yeah, I had the condos I did with my husband. We did a flip, and then we bought another single family home. So we did some little stuff, but
Mhm.
once I decided on multifamily, and that's what I wanted to do, I found I'd met quite a few people in Keyspire and just the
Yeah.
investing community. So I found partners who had the same vision and the same goals.
Yeah.
So we decided to, so it was we purchased a sixplex. And it just so happened that same week, because we purchased a 24 unit.
Oh
So
dear.
like,
Big
yeah,
week.
yeah, it kind of just happened so randomly. Like our first offer on the 24 units wasn't accepted. So then we put an offer on the sixplex. We got
Yeah.
the sixplex, but then the 24 unit, they came
Back
back, the
around.
seller came
Yeah.
back and was like, actually
Wow.
the offer we accepted fell through. Do you still want it? And so we're
Sure,
like,
why not?
yeah,
Yeah.
obviously. So yeah, it was 30 units kind of right off the bat,
Yeah.
and it was, well, three separate buildings and 30
Yeah.
units. So
Wow.
yeah, it was like just thrown right in there, but it was
Yeah.
great.
But
It
you
was
learn
great.
by doing, right? So I guess I know
Yeah.
you've done a lot since then. When you look back at now the last couple of years, what would you say you feel like is your biggest success and why?
Um, yeah, that's hard. I feel like just this whole thing and becoming a full-time and like doing this full-time
Yeah.
is crazy. Like sometimes I can't believe I did this. Like
Yeah.
I'm still shocked. So I like just being here, like being able to do it full time
Yeah.
feels like a huge success. But in terms of projects, there's one project, um, actually no, there's a couple of projects I'm working on now that I feel very like happy. I mean, all the projects, like they're all so exciting and I feel very proud of all of them.
Yeah.
But like getting into the bigger projects, we're working on, my partners are working on a 36 unit right now that
Hmm.
we're transitioning, an existing building that we're transitioning and maximizing the operating income. And that building, like we're not complete yet, but it feels, yeah, I feel
On its
very
way.
proud.
Yeah.
It's on
So
its
can you
way. I
talk
feel very proud of about
about
that
that
one.
project in a little bit more detail,
Mhm.
like exactly how you identified that as a good opportunity and what kind of things you're doing to improve to basically force appreciation and, bring that um, to make it worth it really for you and for your investors.
For sure. It's identifying. Yeah, we identified it as a property that had a lot of opportunity in terms of increasing the income, the revenues. Like the rents were not maximized. They were at least 30%, 40 below in some 40s. Some of
Yeah.
the units were 40 below market value. So there was some room to increase there.
Hmm.
And with the larger buildings, with the commercial buildings, as soon as you increase the income, you increase the value.
Yeah.
So we had room to increase rents. And then another huge factor in that building is it was not separately metered in terms of hydro.
Yeah.
So separately metering the hydro and reducing the hydro cost substantially by like
Yeah.
$50,000 a year.
Yeah.
That also was a huge way to optimize. So those are the two main things we did, but we're
Yeah.
also adding parking, storage. So just doing everything to, one, provide more amenities and options and value add for the tenants, but
Yeah.
it also provides more revenue, which
Yeah.
increases the building value. So yeah, I guess one great thing about that building is, a great thing. It's always great to find a building where you can really maximize rents, but
Yeah.
that that building wasn't only the rents. Like a couple of the other buildings we purchased, the rents were so low, $600 for a 2-bedroom. So there was a lot of room to bring that up.
Everyone's like, what? Where's
yeah, like, is that even possible? Yeah. But yeah, this building wasn't like that. Like rents were, over 1,000, like 1,200, some of them 1,200, 13. So they weren't super low.
Yeah.
But the benefit for that, what's been happening is that tenants have been turning over a lot more willingly because they can find someplace else that's similar. So like where it's really hard to turn over in Ontario, speaking of Ontario, where it's really hard to turn over units where tenants are paying 600 because
where are they
I
going to
wouldn't
go?
want,
You
yeah,
can
where
barely rent a room, I don't think, for 600.
Right. So yeah, this one, yeah, we've been turning it over a lot. And tenants, they're not, they're more willing and like they're able, like we offer cash for keys, so they can take those funds and use it for, to, I don't know, go on a trip, do whatever they want. Like it's just bonus.
And what would be that average cost? Because I think in the investment community, that's a term that we're all very familiar with. But for someone that, is new to this space, like what would you typically be offering in the way of a cash for keys situation?
Yeah, I think it really depends where you're offering it, but it's gone up in the last few years for sure. I think tenants just are a little, like, they're savvy, they know. We in this building, we offered 4,000. And then like now that we're kind of getting to the last units, we're offering a little more, like we're closer to 6,000. But yeah, we want to make it like, we know it's a disruption, like to move your life and your home. Like, so we do want to make, offer, make it a win-win for the tenant and for us. So
yeah.
So
I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes people are in these properties for sometimes 10 years or 20 years. I was talking to an investor recently and they said that they offered someone 100,000.
Oh
They
my
literally
gosh.
like went that, and the person still just wouldn't budge. It just wasn't happening. So obviously here in Ontario, the LTB rules are so strict, and the tenants, in many ways have a lot more rights than the landlord. So it can be a tricky situation. So I give you credit for going this route here locally. I guess in terms of lessons, like I'm sure that it hasn't all been smooth sailing. So are there any lessons that you would want to share that, you had to kind of figure things out as you went? And looking at it now, is there anything that you would have done differently based on your experience?
Yeah, there's been lessons all along the way. I feel like every day there's like, lessons, challenges.
What lessons up for today?
What lesson am I going to learn today? Yeah, it's so true. But no, I think one of the biggest lessons, and because it really affected our project, this was a smaller fourplex that I was doing in Alberta and Calgary, and it was is just not doing enough research or getting enough like information on a contractor before we hired him. Like we were just, anxious to get started. We just needed someone to start. We're like, okay, you're available. Perfect. Like, come on. And it totally backfired. Like they weren't really qualified.
The con contractor.
It wasn't like the worst contractor story I'm sure everybody's heard, but it just
wasn't the best either.
He wasn't really super experienced, so he didn't bring in proper sub trades. Things weren't getting done. It took a lot longer than expected. It wasn't done, as well. So it just, and like that affects your whole project.
Well, time is money, right? So I think that's something that I've heard a lot lately, that, there's all these issues with supply chain, there's issues with trades and getting people in. And then on top of that, some of the refinancing is taking longer. So I think when you're an investor, you always want to not only pad your budget, but sometimes pad your time, because it's all interconnected in terms of how things are going to go and flow.
For sure. Yeah. And like this contractor, he was actually, and I guess what I would throw out there is like, he was recommended by somebody. So we automatically trusted that he was going to be good. So like, my advice is like, it doesn't matter. Make sure you see work that they've done. Make sure like you really know their experience, because it's like, it's your money. Like it's thousands and thousands of dollars you're going to be paying this person. So, but
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not the first
it's
time that
true.
I've heard that, that's for sure.
Yeah. Actually, and something else I've learned, actually, like one of the main things, which I mean, it seems obvious now that I'm saying it, but just to work as fast as you can. Because, like you said,
Yeah.
you mentioned the time.
Yeah.
Time, like even just delaying something a week has such a ripple effect.
Mhm.
So, like when you're working on, especially like any project where you have carrying costs, which is
Yeah.
almost all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, work fast. Like don't,
Yeah.
if you can do something right away or get somebody else to help you, like get it
Yeah.
done faster. Like
Yeah.
it is so critical to like
Yeah.
work
I
on
think
double time.
I had an employee once upon a time, and that was one thing. She's like, if I learn anything from you, it's to get things done today because you just don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. And our business was obviously very different from real estate, but just from day to day, like, a client will come to you with something on impossibly short notice, or someone decides that they don't want to work that day, and it throws your whole day off. So if you can like get the 20 things done today, it just clears your schedule for tomorrow for all those unforeseen things that can just happen. Right. So I think that's good practice, whether you're in business, a real estate investor, really like in any situation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. Just get it. Yeah, get it done
Get it
fast. Because
done.
then the more you can do, the more money
Yeah.
you can make.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that note, we're just going to take a really quick break for a word from our sponsors. Introducing Honeybee Development Group.
Hi everyone, my name is Alejandra.
And I'm Mimi, and together Alejandra and I lead Honeybee Development Group, where we deliver exceptional results for properties and projects in the development sector.
So as co-owner of Honeybee Development Group, I'm here to inspire you. I'm here to give you all the words of encouragement to say, yes, you can do it, and start today. Don't wait until tomorrow.
Build a strong support system and a network around you. Real estate is not a one-person game. It takes a lot of minds to collaborate. So have the right accountants, lawyers, the network of support that can help you and answer your questions so you don't make some very expensive mistakes.
Every real estate investor started somewhere. So please visit our website, honeybeedevelopment.com, and then let's see where the universe is going to take you. Just get that first step.
Thanks again for following along with this episode of Inspired to Invest. In addition to real estate, investing, and running my own brand experience agency for 18 years, I also published a book called The Accidental Entrepreneur in October of 2021. This is my story, and it chronicles how I turned tragedy into triumph to embrace my destiny in entrepreneurship. If you're interested in picking up a copy, you can find the link at serenahomesrealtor.com, and you can also find my link tree with all of the retailers in the details below. Thanks again for your support. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Inspire to Invest. We have Rosanne Selci here, and she's just talking about some of her successes and lessons as a real estate investor. So you talked about some of those lessons. Now, when you think back to the last couple of years, what would you define as kind of your biggest obstacle?
It would be, and I don't know if this is necessarily an obstacle, but I think it was changing the thought process around what I was doing from just, and this is when I originally thought about becoming a full-time investor, working, it was all I wanted to do was just work on projects. I'm just going to work on projects. That's all I want to do. I love renovations. I love being on site.
Yeah.
But I think what like totally kind of threw me off was that, and that someone, I forget who, like, it's a business.
Yeah.
So switching my thought process to just working on these projects and being, a project coordinator or, managing, it's like building a business. And like, I think that's been not an obstacle, but kind of just a whole new world.
Yeah.
Like I never thought about being an entrepreneur, like, and that's essentially what this is. Like you're building, managing an entire business. You have to think about your structure, your employees, your, hiring people and managing people. And that's very different from managing a project.
Yeah.
So
and it's obviously not scalable, right? Like, I mean, I ran my own business for 18 years, but I was brought in for operations. So like you, it's like I plan the events and that was kind of my, what I like to do. And it was very difficult when we got to the point that I knew that I was getting in our way of growth and I had to hire and delegate and, just try to manage all of that stuff that kind of goes along with it. And they often say, like, for a business owner, you've got to be working on the business, not in it. Right. So eventually you'll get to the point where hopefully you'll have 5 of you, and you're kind of overseeing that big picture so that you can continue to scale and grow and acquire and things like that, because it's just not possible if you're the one doing it. Like there's only so many hours in the day, right? So it's just, I think that is an important, not only just a mindset shift, but just from a skills perspective, just trying to identify how you can put those right people in place so that you can continue to grow.
For sure. Yeah. And it's scary because you're usually hiring before you have more business or before you feel like you can afford it. And it's like, you're taking that risk, that like leap of faith. Yeah. So it's really cool. I love it now, but as soon as, my first original thought, I'm like, oh my God, a business. I don't know what I'm doing.
Tell me about it. So obviously you joined a real estate education platform and you've got some support from other investors. What do you think is the best advice that you've ever been given that you put into practice?
I think around hiring, I think that's been some really great advice because like I said, hiring someone is scary. You don't feel like someone else is going to know how to do it as well as you, or like that they're going to get it. But that's probably the best advice is take the leap, like whether it's hiring or like whatever it is, like just like I think and like coming on to podcast and doing, getting out there to like share what I'm doing. Cause like I had to, I wish I'd found out about like investing, like, even just on a small scale or what, I wish I'd done it so much sooner. Like,
that's common. Most people say their only regret I have about real estate is not getting into it sooner. Right. So it may not feel that way, but I would say as a consensus, that seems to be the vibe that I get from everybody.
It's right. Yeah. So it need like that. So that's partly what, we gotta like, and your podcast, like doing this is great. So like more people can get inspired. I think there's the more it's out there, the more we can all work together and create some amazing projects and things.
Well, I think so oftentimes people depend on their job and they can look at something like real estate is so risky. And I look at it like, well, if you have multiple streams of income and you have assets and things like that, like the market can go up and down. But if you have a job, like you only have one job, you only have one source of income, and depending on what kind of job that is, like you may or may not have a great pension. But I think what real estate investing really allows you to do is to take charge of not only your financial future, but creating that long-term generational wealth for your family where, you could take care of your daughter and grandkids and like literally just keep on going down the line and stuff like that. Right. So I think it gives us an entirely different sense of fulfillment and purpose than just getting up and grinding it out for someone else's company and kind of building their wealth. Right. So it's a very, very different experience.
Yeah, for sure. Just having that, even that one property or two properties that's just sitting there and it's available. Like if anything were to happen, because you could lose your, like, there's people get laid off all the time. And like for retirement, like there's less and less jobs now that have a pension. So to be able to save for your retirement from your income, like it's very difficult.
No, absolutely. Especially with the cost of everything going up in the last year. Like we talk about that all the time with the groceries. I'm like, we're spending triple. Like I remember when my husband and I started dating, like we'd spend about $600 a month and we don't go a month without going less than 2,000 now. I'm like, we're not eating that much more. Like what's happening? So I think it's crazy because it blows what our mortgage used to be like out of the water. So I don't know how people are really getting by when you think about it. But when you think about overall, like you've obviously achieved a lot in this last year. So it kind of creates a question like, what's next for you? And if you had to define it, like what would be your freedom number? Like at what level, whether it's number of doors or the size of the portfolio, do you think you'd be like, okay, I've made it? Like, I'm not to say you would stop, but you would have that feeling of true financial freedom.
I think 1,000 doors is like my goal at this point. So
Yeah.
I'm
And where are you now?
I'm a 10th of the way there.
Okay. I said around 100.
Yeah. So yeah, I have like around 100 doors. So yeah, I'm on my way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think 1,000 doors, like that's a good round number.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really love development. Actually I like both. Like existing, it's more of a rush, like you're trying to like get things, where development's a little bit of a slower cadence. So I really want to work on some larger development projects, and expand a little bit more in Alberta, Calgary area. So but those are my next few targets.
Nice. And what would you think you would tell, like when you think back to yourself, maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, is there anything that you go back and tell her now, knowing like some of the things that you know?
I would say just, you know what, when I first started, I was very nervous because I was new, right? I was like, no one's going to take me seriously. I'm not experienced in this, but I would say like, nobody knows what they're really doing. For the most part, or if people know you're not, like, everyone's actually really awesome and they ultimately want to help you.
Yeah.
So, you always feel like, well, I had this thought that I'd be judged, or like, I wouldn't be taken seriously, but that's not the case. Like everybody's working ultimately to the same goal. Like everybody wants to, be successful, helpful, a good human. So I would say, like, don't worry about that crap. Like just
and
go
don't sell yourself short. I think you're really smart and resourceful, and you had a really great career up until this point. And a lot of those skills are transferable when you really think about the nature of the work that you were doing then and how that can kind of relate to all the things that you're doing now.
Yeah.
Now, would you say, is there any particular quote that you find inspires you?
Yes. One quote that I have on my board is, I have multiple, but one of the ones that always sticks in my mind is want it more than you fear it. And I think that's so true, because when things are a little scary, like that's when you should go for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I say if your dreams aren't big enough or to scare you, they're not big enough.
That's right. That's so true. Yeah. All the things worth doing are a little scary at first. Absolutely.
Yeah, just the newness of anything. Now, I guess in terms of our audience out there, is there anything that you want to leave with them, or any golden nuggets that can maybe inspire them to get started on their journey, or perhaps continue on what they're working on?
Yeah, I would say just go for it. Just talk. I think what helped me to really go for it is just talking to others who are doing it. And you'll realize that, they're just like you. Like, they're just normal people. Like, you can, whatever it is you're thinking of maybe doing, or what might be a good idea, you like do it, like go for it. Just talk to people who are doing it, and like, what are your first few steps, and like, just start doing it, because it'll be worth it.
Awesome. Now, for anyone that wants to get in touch with you, where can they find you on social?
I'm always on Instagram at Rosanne Selci, so just my name. Same with Facebook, and find me there. That's where I hang out. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being a part of us today. I think you're definitely one of the most inspiring women that I've met in this past year. And if anyone out there likes what they've seen, please make sure that you subscribe. And we'll also be sharing content from today's episode on Inspire to Invest podcast on social. Thanks for joining us. Thank you again to our sponsors, Honeybee Development Group and Synergy Mastermind, for bringing you this episode of the Inspired to Invest podcast. The views represented on this podcast are for general information only and does not constitute investment or other professional advice or an offering of securities. The host and guests featured on Inspired to Invest make no representations as to the performance of any particular investment. Should you decide to make an investment, you are responsible for conducting your own review and analysis. It is recommended that you obtain independent legal, accounting, and tax advice from licensed professionals.